WTBQ.
Hey, this is Joe Nance, and welcome to the Creativity and Technology Solutions for Business and Life show. The show will feature, as always, solutions for today's competitive world and the people who run small to mid-sized businesses and the folks trying to meet the unique challenges of daily living. We want you to think beyond the box and connect the dots for success. To accomplish this, the show will use experts to talk about technology, its trends, and also we talk about new ways to leverage creativity in everyday life and business. Listeners will be able to hear the show online via the website at WTBQ.com and 1110 AM and 93.5 FM on the dial. Listeners can call in on 845-651-1110 if you have questions. I'm Joseph Dans. I'm your host. I head up the Rogue Wave Creative Group, and we are based in Warwick. It can be found on the web at rwcgroup.com. My Warwick-based company provides think tank services for the financial, technology, and consumer product industries with a focus on harnessing creativity. I also write a column for the Times Herald Record, a Dow Jones publication. And today we're going to be talking about technology and 9/11 related issues. 9/11 is coming up very shortly, and we're going to be talking to Ted Buechley. He's the president of Solid Technologies, and Seth Buechley, and Ted Erb. He's a public safety consultant and a former fire prevention chief of Bellevue, Washington, about what we can do to prevent 9/11 future wireless towers of Babel. And I'll call it wireless towers of Babel, and we're going to talk about that later on. Some of the challenges, the technology challenges that people had back then. Mr. Buechley is the president of Solid Technologies, a publicly traded global communications solutions provider, and founder of the Safer Buildings Coalition, whose mission it is to make buildings safer by ensuring pervasive indoor cellular and public safety communications. And he's been a champion of the best practices that people can develop so that we do have safe buildings, we do have safe venues that are out there. And his company has most notably deployed its technology in the Empire State Building, UN, and another building called, a group of buildings called The Collection in Bellevue, Washington, just to name a few venues of high and important note. Mr. Erb is a former fire prevention officer and investigator for the Bellevue Washington Fire Department, and he worked with them from 2000 to 2013, and he was instrumental in developing some of the most comprehensive fire codes designed to ensure public safety in large buildings and towers, not to mention the deployment of in-building wireless systems like those provided by Solid Technologies. His initiatives serve as a model for his state and a growing number of other states and municipalities around the country. He's now a consultant helping businesses and municipalities provide the highest level of public safety in their codes and emergency communication technology. Gentlemen, did I do you justice? Was that a good introduction?
I think so.
All right, good. So we have Ted and Erb on the line. Mr. Erb, where were you as a fireman? Let's say on 9/11, and what was it? What was the impact of it on you?
It's certainly a day I'll never forget, like everybody else in this country. But I can remember to the second. I was standing in the battalion chief's office, actually on my way to work, quite frankly, when it first started. Me and another inspector with the city of Bellevue, with the fire department, on our way to work, heard about this. At the beginning, wasn't quite sure what was going on. I remember walking into the battalion chief's office at Station 1 in Bellevue and standing there watching the television footage and just thinking of just what was going on in those buildings, and immediately thinking, oh my Lord, this is going to be just a tremendous feat for them to overcome just in the means of communication, because knowing what we were working on at the time there in Bellevue, this initiative hadn't really taken hold anywhere. Yeah. And knowing that we were on the forefront of that, I'm thinking, boy, these are old buildings. I can imagine the difficulties we've had in Bellevue, how that was going on there.
I guess the World Trade Center certainly were old buildings by standards, right? Going back to 1971.
Yeah, I mean, 71, 72, I believe, when they were built. So, yeah, 110 stories. The tallest building here in Bellevue was, at that time, we were just building a 42-story Phase 1 of the Bellevue Collection, and we were just developing a city ordinance that wasn't yet adopted in the fire code to help this issue about communication in buildings.
Yeah, and you fought fires yourself. You were not just the person making sure that the codes were well developed, but you fought fires as well.
I did. I started when I was 18 years old as a firefighter in Southern California and moved my way up through the ranks and then into the fire marshal's office in 2000 when I came to Bellevue.
Yeah. And Mr. Buechley, where were you on 9/11?
I was home. I remember just being with the family. 9/11 happens to be my wife's birthday, and so we had some plans, and obviously those plans were disrupted throughout the day. But at that point, I was just beginning to be active in the area of communications that we're going to cover today, and so I had no idea that it would lead to kind of the activities that I'm involved with now.
Sure, and things certainly have changed since then. It's been 12 years since 9/11, and Mr. Erb, what happened with the first responders in 9/11 and their wireless communications? So since you've been a first responder, maybe you can talk about some of the problems and then maybe talk about some of the developments since then with FirstNet, but we're not quite there yet.
No, we're not quite there yet. It's, as far as first responders and their ability or inability to communicate on that day, I think it was twofold. One, you had a number of organizations or first responders involved, from both NYPD to the fire department to FEMA to Port Authority. And, I'm not from New York. I don't want to certainly speak exactly for them, but knowing what I've experienced in my career as far as communication, when you start getting multiple agencies involved in an incident of any size, communication becomes an issue. And I believe for them on that day, from things I've read over the years, it was a tremendous hurdle, one in which they really couldn't overcome. People weren't on the same frequencies. Interagencies couldn't talk to each other. Even police and fire had difficulty communicating on who was doing what and where.
Yeah, now that has changed since then, right? What is FirstNet and that type of initiative? That's a government initiative, right?
It is, and I would defer probably more to Seth because I know he's got a good handle on that. But from what I understand from that, it was an initiative brought a couple years ago, even maybe further back than that, where the federal government now is allocating the 700 and 800 bands for public safety, so that long term. I think the goal is that all agencies, police, fire, FEMA, you name it, that's involved in any kind of national or regional response effort, whether this be from city to city or state to state, would be able to communicate more easily with every agency.
Seth, is that your perspective as well?
It is. So as an outgrowth of the 9/11 Commission, so the 9/11 Commission was a nonpartisan, or I should say bipartisan group that got together and was tasked with evaluating, what all led up to the events of 9/11 and probably more importantly, what should we do about it? And so 2 years and 4 months after September 11, 2001, the 9/11 Commission report was issued. And one of the areas that the Commission focused in on was the lack of interoperability that was present in terms of the communication systems that allowed the disparate first responders to work together, or that didn't allow the first responders to work together in the way that was necessary. And so the effort began to zero in on how could a nationwide first responder network be constructed that allowed interoperability. And fast forward into 2011, and some spectrum was set aside for the development of a new first responder network nationwide. They call it the First Responder Network Authority, and it's become known as FirstNet.
And I mean, that's very important. And that's kind of part of I guess that's really part of the solution there, that they're able to communicate. But when Seth, when you're inside a building and you're in the internal component of it and you're trying to conduct wireless communications, whether you're a first responder or even, let's say, you're a consumer that's in a building, what's the technology that we're developing today on the in-building wireless side? Your company develops systems to help both sides of the coin communicate.
That's right, Joe. There's been a focus from the cellular providers for several years now, in earnest, I would say, of 6 or 7, towards enhancing cellular coverage in buildings, and we make systems that are designed to support that initiative. They call them distributed antenna systems, or DAS systems. And whereas we've deployed many of those for cellular, we also began to notice that building owners and local authorities were seeking to enhance their public safety communications in those same buildings. And so we set out to innovate solutions that would allow essentially both types of communication to happen in the indoor environment. Our view is that they're both important. Most consumers will use their cell phone to dial 911.
Right.
But when the first responder shows up on site, we think it's important that their radios also work in that indoor environment, and that's where we've been focusing our innovation over the last few years.
Very good, folks. We're talking to Seth Buechley. He's the president of Solid Technologies, and Ted Erb, a public safety consultant, former fire prevention chief of Bellevue, Washington. And we're talking about avoiding future 9/11 wireless towers of Babel. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Protecting your car can be one of the most important things you do this year. And at Leo Catus Ford, they can make it easy. Stop by today for these great deals. The Works Fuel Saver Package. They'll rotate your tires, change your oil and filter.
That's enough. Hi, this is Leo Catus Sr. You know, we've been running the same commercial for a long, long time.
But Grandpa, the message is still the same. Quality you can trust. What do you think, Dad?
Well, Matt, quality inventory, both new and pre-owned cars and trucks, plus quality parts sales. And as always, quality service. And with Ford Motor Company making the best cars and trucks in America...
Isn't it time to come home to Ford?
No, that's Leo Catus Ford.
Celebrating over 35 years of serving the community. So call us at 986-1131. That's 986-1131. Leo Catus Ford, Warwick, New York.
Quality you can trust.
Warwick Press is your full-service digital print shop. When it has to look its best, trust Warwick Press with your business cards, newsletters, letterheads, event calendars, and more. They can gloss UV coat your project, do spiral and saddle stitch binding, and lamination too. Let Warwick Press do your posters and banners, trade show graphics, and displays. Warwick Press, 33 South Street. All major credit cards accepted. Call 986-9846. That's 986-9846.
The law firm of Beatty & Krahulik, founded in 1872, provides sophisticated legal services to businesses and individuals throughout the Orange County area. As the oldest law firm in Orange County, the firm has developed a reputation of providing the highest quality client service. This is attorney Bob Krahulik, the lawyer guy here on WTBQ Radio. Call for a free consultation at 986-1155. That's 986-1155 at HudsonValleyLaw.us.
Donate your car to Heritage for the Blind. Whether it runs or not, they'll tow it away for free. And Heritage for the Blind is an IRS-recognized charity, so your donation is tax-deductible. Heritage for the Blind accepts cars, vans, trucks, and boats. And you'll be making a difference to those who need help. Call right now, and as a special thank you, you'll receive a free 3-day vacation voucher to many exciting locations. Call Heritage for the Blind right now and donate your car. Call 1-800-680-8964. That's 1-800-680-8964.
St. Anthony Community Hospital in Warwick is your community partner for all your family's health care needs. From our state-of-the-art birthing center to our senior living facilities, we provide a lifetime of care, one life at a time. St. Anthony is part of the Bon Secours Charity Health System, along with Good Samaritan Hospital in Suffern, Bon Secours Community Hospital in Port Jervis, and Good Samaritan Home Care Agency. St. Anthony Community Hospital, proud to be your partner in health.
Hi, this is Dr. Nick Belasco, host of the Bon Secours Roundtable and director of the Bon Secours Concussion Management Program. If you're in the market for a new family medicine doctor, or if you have a sports injury, concussion, work injury, muscle or joint problem, come see us at 1 Hatfield Lane, Suite 1B, Goshen, New York. You can reach us at 845-291-0966. That's 845-291-0966. Same-day appointments are available.
Everybody, this is Rachel Ray. Join me today and every weekday with Rach on the radio. I'll have tips to save you money, celebrity chit-chat, and of course, food. All from the kitchen table of our Emmy Award-winning show, Rachel Ray.
Weekdays at 12:30.
WTBQ.
Hey, this is Joe Danz, and welcome back to the Creativity and Technology Solutions for Business and Life show. And today we're talking about avoiding future 9/11 wireless towers of Babel. And what we're really talking about is communications within these large buildings, whether it's on the consumer side, whether you want to get onto Netflix or you want to call 911 because these are large venues and they're very dense in terms of communications, or most importantly, first responders getting into these buildings and being able to communicate with each other and other people to assure public safety. And we were just talking to, we've been talking to Seth Buechley. He's the president of Solid Technologies, and Ted Erb. And both gentlemen are big public safety advocates. Ted's a consultant, and Seth's company installs in-building wireless systems that let people communicate with each other. And Seth, we were just talking about how far the technology had come. I mean, back in 2001, we didn't have a lot of people in a building in a large building using smartphones and certainly taxing any antenna systems you might have in there. So things have changed a lot. But you can, as you said before, you can help building owners or the skyscraper folks make sure that there's public safety and that there's connectivity for consumers as well.
Yeah, what we've seen is the obvious adoption of the smartphone. It's become everybody's new personal assistant, best friend, and the cause around what's driving building owners and hospitals and others who rely on mobile communications in their business. Everybody wants that coverage in buildings, and now it's shifting to more of a capacity issue where they don't just want to be able to make a phone call, which used to be how you use your mobile phone. Today they're wanting to use these data-rich applications which require a lot of bandwidth and can only be done with these in-building distributed antenna systems. And so what we've seen is an evolution of the technology. We've also seen some new design tools that are being used to kind of communicate how these systems should be designed. There's an innovator in our industry named iBwave that has kind of become the de facto standard for how these in-building systems are designed. And then we've seen the technology emerge. And so now you can have one system that can do all of the different cellular providers and all of the different public safety frequencies on a common platform. And so we're seeing more and more of these being implemented across the country.
With that technology, can you do it in a virtual world before you go in and start placing antennas here or there? How is that the way it works, and how important is that?
Increasingly, that is the way it works. And so we can take architectural drawings, which are just digital images, computer-aided drafting files, which would give us the sense of what the building floor plan will look like long before there's ever a bulldozer mobilized on site. And we can begin to design where the equipment should be, where it's going to propagate from. And through these tools, iBwave tool, we can actually profile the type of building construction that will be used so we can get very, very accurate dimensioning of how the signals will penetrate those rooms when the building's actually constructed. And we can see that visually, which really helps.
Yeah. Yep, and I understand they can even measure the density of people involved in sometimes as well, too, because people have some impact, which is kind of wild.
Yeah, it is, and it's all a function of how the designer takes the time to document the characteristics of each type of material in that future building.
Well, that's kind of in terms of costs, and I guess that's one of the issues there. And I do want to talk to Ted about some of the fire codes that are out there. But obviously, in putting things in putting these in-building wireless systems together, there's got to be a great expense there. I presume that cuts down the expense, but that also certainly makes it simpler and less costly for the folks that want to deploy it.
Ted, you want to?
From a fire code standpoint and from the public safety sector, we deal with folks day in and day out, developers and stuff, with new buildings. And, this is basically two aspects. We're talking new construction, where, places like the city of Bellevue have mandated this is where we're going to have these systems in these certain types of buildings in new construction, high-rise buildings, parking garages, buildings over a certain height. But existing buildings, public safety is kind of taking a back seat to that, and I guess put it more on the cellular providers or the building owners to say we want cellular signals in these buildings. And then with everyone involved, say, well, if we're going to do this anyway, even though maybe in this smaller building the public safety portion of this is not required, it definitely is beneficial to them to then put in a system like Seth was referring to that would do it all. Because it is very expensive, especially when we're talking big buildings. When we're talking 40-something story high-rise buildings, that is hundreds of millions of dollars for them to build. We're talking $1 million to put in a system, and maybe in the big picture it's not a lot, but it all adds up in.
Yeah, especially in these times too, where we're certainly, states, cities, the U.S. government are starting to mandate certain types of technology. Let's talk about the codes, Ted. Are you mandating technology? What are you mandating? In these special codes that you have for these large buildings.
Well, I wouldn't say we're mandating technology, because we're leaving that to the designer and their partners involved to come up with the technology or the system that best works for them. Mm-hmm. What we've done in Bellevue and what we did prior to 9/11, we were working on an initiative at that time, an amendment to the current fire code at that time, to provide communication in buildings for first responders. Yeah. That has transitioned over the years to where it is now, to where we're providing not just public safety, but we're providing wireless for everyone. Yeah. And it really has gone from where Bellevue approaches it strictly, this is just a first responder public safety issue, to now a more broad approach for everyone. And it has been where we have just told people in the amendment of the code of this is what we want them to provide, in the ability to provide or establish communication for first responders on a certain frequency, at a certain strength, in a certain type of building of a certain size. And then we leave it to the designers to come up with what's going to work for them.
Oh, okay. So it's basically the designers that are looking, but then you're going to test it later on too, aren't you? How are you going to do it? How are you going to test their capability based on what's needed and what's promised?
Well, we approach it two different ways. First, we rely on the installer, the designer and the installer of the system, and we put some parameters in the code of how we want them to test for signal strength and clarity and all those sorts of things, and they provide a report to us. The fire department, the fire marshal's office where I worked, would simply go out and verify that report with our handheld radios that have the ability to then measure signal in all areas of the building. And then compare the signal that we received to the signal that the vendor provided for a given area of the building. And if they match up, they're close to each other with some other parameters involved. Obviously, it gets kind of technical, but we have some parameters in place on how they're supposed to measure it and where they're supposed to measure it and what areas have to have certain strengths over other areas. And we're comparing that. And it's submitted as a document when the building is final and ready for occupancy. And to this point, we really haven't had any issues.
Yeah, boy, I'll tell you, obviously it's becoming more and more complicated if you do want to put a building up, if you're going to deliver on the public safety side. And I guess the other question too, Seth, is when you have a combination, I understand that there's something called the collection out in Bellevue, which is a large compilation of buildings. Maybe you could talk about that and how your technology is helping them on both ends, on the public safety side and the consumer side.
Sure. So the Bellevue Collection is the largest mixed-use facility in the Bellevue, Washington area. It's a very affluent area. So this is, I want to say it's over 8 million square feet and growing. So could be very high-end office complexes, several large hotels, a Hyatt, a Westin, and a very large shopping mall. And so very diverse. And in these new codes that Bellevue adopted that said essentially, to occupy a new building, you must demonstrate that the radios for the police department and fire are going to work adequately when that building is constructed. And so the building owner was faced with a new requirement to enhance the public safety. And we got involved early on, and the question from the building owner, early on was, all right, I need to do this. How much is it going to cost me?
Yeah.
And let's use a round number of, say, $500,000. And then the very next question is, well, what else can it do for me? How can it scale? How can it be extended to give me some other things that I might need for the investment? And at that point, it was very early, and the answer is we could do certain frequencies of cellular as well. And so for a building owner who's trying to solve their public safety requirement, they also want to leverage that investment to enhance cellular. So fast forward to where we're at today. Where we're at today with the Bellevue Collection is new buildings are continuing to be built, and now the building owner's goal is to have public safety communications spread throughout not just the new buildings, but all of the existing buildings. And we're in the middle of helping the cellular providers join that system as well. And so when it's all said and done, we'll have a common distributed antenna system that supports the needs of current public safety. It supports the needs for future FirstNet when that nationwide network gets built.
Right.
And then it also meets the needs of the cellular operators, which in themselves are very complex because each cellular operator may have as many as 4 different frequencies. And so the requirements from a technology standpoint are getting more complex, but the good news is the innovation continues to move at a pace where we're keeping ahead of it.
Very good.
Well, and this, Chad, where this is really helping public safety, and Seth, alluded to this, is, the Bellevue Collection is pushing this into their existing buildings. And even though now the adopted 2012 edition of the Fire Code now requires existing buildings to have these systems in, but they leave that decision to the fire chief or fire marshal of a given jurisdiction to determine whether it's needed or not, most jurisdictions are going to not take that approach. So what Seth's saying with them pushing it into existing buildings, it's really, that's the public safety side is going to get accomplished because people want to be able to bring up their smartphone and do whatever it is that they want to do, whether it's watch a movie, call somebody, have a phone conference. So now we can add public safety to something that we're not telling them right up front in the existing building they have to have. So we're killing 2 birds with 1 stone, essentially.
Yeah, no, that's great. Folks, we're talking with Seth Buechley, and he's the president of Solid Technologies, and Ted Erb, public safety consultant and former fire prevention chief of Bellevue, Washington. We're talking about avoiding future 9/11 Towers of Babel. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Mark Lang with the Warwick Valley Financial Advisors. Finding adequate income in today's low-yield environment is tough, but our Search for Income report will provide you with information on many different income investment options that could help you get a more competitive yield. To get your complimentary copy, call our office at 845-981-7300, and we'll be happy to send it out to you. Securities offered through LPL Financial.
Are you overwhelmed by the needs of an older family member? Is the stress of trying to care for your older one as well as your own life too much to handle? One Call Care Management and the registered nurse is your geriatric care general contractor. After an initial assessment, they'll plan, problem solve, educate, and advocate for the elderly in your life. They'll coordinate and manage all aspects of your loved one's life, from social, financial, and legal issues to their medical care and well-being. One Call Care Management will assist you and your loved one and put them on track to live their twilight years gracefully, healthfully, and with dignity within your budget. Call One Call Care Management today for a free consultation at 544-7561, 544-7561, or visit onecallcare.com. That's the number one, callcare.com, serving the Hudson Valley and northern New Jersey.
When my construction company has a tight deadline, I need a contract bond fast. That's why I work with Selective. With their Contractor Express program, I can pre-qualify for bonds for many of my smaller jobs in just a few minutes.
Selective. Response is everything. For quick and easy bond solutions, visit selective.com.
Small contract bonds and no hassle. That works for me.
This is Garrett Derlin from Sealy & Derlin Insurance. For quick and affordable contract bond needs, contact us at 866-255-3439.
Insuring your business is serious stuff. You don't need gimmicks or cutesy mascots or punchlines. You certainly don't want red tape. You just want the right coverage at the right price. We're as serious about insuring your business as you are about running it. Selective. Response is everything.
This is Garrett Derlin from Sealy & Derlin Insurance. To create your custom business insurance solution, contact us at 866-255-3439.
Starting Wednesday, save 50% off the entire store at Gap Outlet. $14.99 sweaters, $6.99 tees, and more. And starting Thursday at Banana Republic Factory Store, save 50% off everything. $19.99 dresses and denim, $12.99 polos, $9.99 tops. Hurry, sale ends Labor Day. We have 25 stores in the tri-state area. Find your closest store at gap.com/outlet stores or bananarepublic.com/factory store. Sale excludes gift cards and Gap Outlet clearance.
You want 90s? Then you got it. If you missed the rock, rap, funk, punk, thrash, grunge, and pure rebellion of 90s music, then tune in to Party Like It's 1999 with your host, Alex Howard, every Friday from 11 p.m. to midnight, only on 93.5 WTBQ.
WTBQ weather.
We have beautiful September weather coming in. It'll stay with us right into early next week with mostly sunny skies today and a high near 80. Clear tonight, we'll head down into the mid-50s. Tomorrow, mostly sunny and cooler, our high in the lower 70s. Mostly clear and cold tomorrow night, heading down into the upper 30s. And for Friday, sunny and quite cool with a high just about 70 or so. This is meteorologist Tony Salimo from the WTBQ Weather Center.
WTBQ.
Hey, this is Joe Danza, and welcome back to the Creativity and Technology Solutions for Business and Life show. Today we're talking about avoiding future 9/11 wireless towers of Babel, and we're talking about the technology and the fire code initiatives that people have been putting out there. We're talking to Seth Buechley. He's the president of Solid Technologies, and Ted Erb. He's a public safety consultant and former fire prevention chief of Bellevue, Washington. And Seth, Ted had just mentioned that the Bellevue collection, which is a whole bunch of different types of buildings from skyscrapers to kind of a mall, people and first responders were enjoying the connectivity there on the public safety side and also on the consumer connectivity side. But are all these types of systems built the same way? I mean, let's say I were in New York, for example, and somebody said to me, well, you've got to have a system here for public safety, and I install it in a building, but then all of a sudden later on I find out that I can't make additions and have the consumers connected in there. Is that a possibility? How does your technology fit into that?
Well, that's a great question. So the most prevailing need culturally is people expect their smartphone to work in a building. Yeah. But we also found through working directly with building owners that the needs of a building owner didn't necessarily line up with the needs of the cellular provider. And so what was happening is cellular providers would come in and they would try to enhance, their own signal, the signal of the cellular provider, and then maybe the next year a different cellular provider would come in. And so a building owner might have multiple systems that really weren't working together, and then along comes a need to enhance for public safety. And the building owner, isn't in the business of figuring all this stuff out. And so at Solid, what we did when we innovated our products to bring to the U.S. market, we focused on the needs of the building owner, and particularly we looked at the way that the public safety market was evolving. And stated simply, there's a lot of different frequencies that are different than the cellular provider's frequencies. And so what we did is we made a system through using some filtering techniques where you could install one system and it was capable of serving frequencies much lower. So for those technical in the audience, we're talking 150 megahertz, 450 megahertz, and 700 megahertz, which were traditionally frequencies that the cellular guys had no interest in covering. So, whereas a large building might have enhancement to make the smartphones work, without the proper technology being deployed, there was really no way to upgrade those systems to where they could also make the public safety frequencies work. And so when we were whiteboarding how we were going to build our systems, we built them from a fundamental standpoint of what does the building owner need today, what might they need tomorrow, and let's make sure that they don't have to rip and replace this thing in the next several years.
Yeah, I presume that would be a huge factor, whether you're refurbishing a building or you're developing a new one as well. Why put all that wireless infrastructure back in there?
Yeah, and what a lot of people don't understand is that, and until you take some time, is, and Ted can maybe comment on this, is the nature of public safety before FirstNet and what public safety communications is very, very fragmented. Each city, county, and state might have different frequencies, and you never really know what you're going to encounter because it changes from city to city. And so having systems that are flexible enough to adapt to that are important. Ted, what do you think about the frequency challenges?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably the biggest, if not one of the biggest challenges. And, from my standpoint, just in the city of Bellevue, when I was there with the fire department, I mean, the whole, what we call the east side of the King County area, which consisted of, the city of Bellevue and Redmond, Kirkland, District 10, a bunch of those, we all belonged to the same, essentially, dispatch center. So the same frequencies. And that worked. But if we had to go to Seattle, which was 5 minutes away from us, or we had to go into another county, they were on a totally different system. I mean, the 800 system, which exists in a good portion of our state, still is not adopted or used by all municipalities. So it's a huge issue. Even just here, where we think in Bellevue, we're ahead of the curve on this issue.
Yeah, and a lot of people have modeled, I know some other states and municipalities, as I mentioned before, have modeled their codes and considerations, and after what you've done, Ted, what about how hard is it? I guess obviously the issue of standardization or uniformity is a big issue.
Yeah, it is, because the fire code, which is what really drives this whole initiative as far as where you're going to have the ability to provide public safety radio communications inside buildings and structures, is adopted by everyone, right? At least here in Washington State, anyone who uses the international set of codes, but that your state has to adopt that. And then that says all of the jurisdictions will adopt this. But it's a base model code. It doesn't work for everyone, so every jurisdiction needs to take that and then amend it so that it works within their jurisdiction because of frequency issues and different, communication centers they work with. I think the long-term goal here eventually, of course, when FirstNet really gets off the ground and this whole initiative brings everyone together, we'll bridge that gap. But this isn't going to happen next year or the year after, and it's going to be very expensive.
Yeah. Mr. Buechley, where does the Safer Buildings Coalition stand on this? Is that kind of their goal to pull things together and get people out there with standards and coordinate things?
The Safer Buildings Coalition stands out front on this issue, mostly because it's a problem that can be solved. And so, we like solving problems. We realize it takes quite a while to solve big problems, but they can be solved. And fundamentally, our view is that buildings are being enhanced for cellular already. They ought to be enhanced for public safety while that process is taking place. So when you start to peel back, what are the reasons that this isn't happening? you start to realize that some of those reasons are perceptions, and some of them are legitimate. And the Safer Buildings Coalition seeks to, foster a dialogue and really move the conversation forward by getting the right stakeholders lined up around what's possible. I think one of our participants in a recent panel in front of the public safety communication world said, we want to inspire rather than just require.
Yeah.
And so that's the mode we're in. We're very clear about our outcomes, which I can elaborate on in a bit.
Yeah, sure. And Mr. Erb, how are first responders responding to the technology that's out there today? And are they finding it a lot more comforting than they have in the past when they might have gone into a building that was on fire? What's your perspective and their perspective? Because those are the people we're concerned about, the people laying their life on the line.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've seen both. I've seen, from a first responder standpoint, I've seen, this is just wonderful. It's great. We can talk. We can communicate. Before a firefighter in a tall building would have to go over to a window to even communicate to the battalion chief down at the street level because of all the concrete and all the furnishings and everything inside a building. Or get to an area where, you had a hoistway or something where that signal could get outside of the building. Now we don't have to do that. The flip side of that is, though, there's some responsibility on ownerships to make sure these systems are maintained. It's not just to throw it in, it's in and it's there for life and no one ever has to touch it again. The fire codes require annual testing of these systems and that they're maintained just like any other life safety system in a building, or they can fail. If they're not, just like this, cellular system, if it's not maintained, when it's needed, it's not going to work. And we've encountered some of that.
So you have to go back on a regular basis, like for example, I guess, any fireman goes back for fire inspections on a regular basis to make sure that safety items are proper there. So you're going back out into the field typically and checking to make sure that there's no degrading of these systems and that they're working as they should.
Yeah, essentially what we're doing is exactly that. Fire inspectors like myself, we would go out and do building inspections, and one of the things we'd be asking for is for that building owner to provide documentation that they've maintained and tested their system annually. And there's some 5-year requirements also, and that they can provide a report that shows they've done this. And then we can do some spot testing on our own with our radios. If that hasn't been done, then just like any other, fire code violation, essentially, we're asking them to get that done, provide documentation that's been done, or we've had firefighters go out on calls and they've said, hey, we know there's a system in this building, but boy, it was like it wasn't there. It wasn't working. So we'd go in, work with the building, find out that maybe they had a failure or something. A card burned up or maybe we were under a building, lost power for a few days and the batteries failed. And so it's just like any other system, it has to be maintained.
Well, they have to have backup too as well, I would presume, right?
So yeah, they do. They definitely, the code and our ordinance gives some language on how much battery backup they have to have on top of, the systems being powered by their emergency generators and all those sorts of things.
Sure. Folks, we're talking about avoiding future 9/11 wireless towers of Babel. We're talking to Seth Buechley. He's the president of Solid Technologies, and Ted Erb, a public safety consultant and former fire prevention chief for Bellevue, Washington, and we'll be right back, so stay tuned.
Hi, this is Dr. Calvin Hargis. Spinal pain is complex, but few doctors have the training or ability to treat spinal pain scientifically and non-surgically. Spinal pain really is best understood when it is approached from an engineering standpoint. It's always amazed me that many doctors take MRIs and low back x-rays laying down when it would be more diagnostic to take them standing to better understand the effects of weight bearing on the spine. When we are standing, the spine moves and shifts under our body weight, and the true nature of back pain can be revealed. This is just one of the many differences in which our office approaches the treatment of spinal pain. Statistically, most chronic pain sufferers never get better. But in our office, most pain patients are significantly better within a few treatments. With 5 years of advanced training and board certification in chiropractic orthopedics, our office treats spine-related conditions in a knowledgeable and scientific way. If you have chronic pain, visit my website at drhargis.com or call our office for a free consultation at 986-5500.
You've got to love these bright sunny days. Picture perfect for gardening.
I do, and so do my sun perennials. Varieties like daylilies, coneflowers, and daisies prefer the brighter spots in our garden, and they add so much color.
I especially love their friendly staff who always give me the best advice and planting tips.
Let's head over there. I need more flowers.
The General's Garden Center and Plant Market on Route 94 in Warwick for all of your gardening needs. Click on generalsgarden.com or call 986-5572. And be sure to like them on Facebook.
Arden Hill Nursery is an entirely organic and green nursery that provides customers with affordable products including a wide variety of plants, fertilizers, bag and bulk mulch, soils, stone, pots, and much more. You buy it, we install it. Mention this ad, get half off annual flats. Call 712-5522 or visit our website at ardenhillnursery.com. Arden Hill Nursery, 185 Orange Turnpike in Sloatsburg.
This is a great time for the delicious taste of eggs. It's fast food that's easy to prepare for breakfast, lunch, dinner, or anytime you want something quick, natural, and absolutely good for you. Why not gather the family around the table and serve up omelets, a quiche, or use your imagination? This is a busy time of year. School activities, dealing with this crazy weather, or just watching your favorite team play. You want something quick, easy, and healthy. The answer is simple. Eggs, the incredible edible egg. It's high in protein and so easy to prepare. Your family will love it, and it comes in its own convenient package. Eggs are nature's perfect food. This is a great time for the delicious taste of eggs. This message courtesy of the American Egg Board and the New Jersey Poultry Promotion Council. That's your local egg producers. Remember, locally produced eggs are fresher by miles. Enjoy eggs today.
When my business got bigger, many things changed. My lunches got shorter, more meetings arranged. My budget got bigger, but all that it meant was I cared even more about how it was spent. When I spend it on radio, I see where it goes. My investment comes back, and my business just grows. Radio helps all businesses to grow. Find out how at radioheardhere.com.
Brought to you by this radio station to remind you that radio is heard here. Radio is heard everywhere.
God has the answer to every single problem in your life. Spiritual Healing Radio will help you to find those answers. Join us on Sunday nights from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Ask God if you should tune in. God will tell you.
WTBQ.
Hey, this is Joe Dance, and welcome back to the Creativity and Technology Solutions for Business and Lifestyle. We're talking about avoiding future 9/11 wireless towers of Babel and the communications problems that we've had in the past, and trying to live really, I guess the best way to say it is to eliminate them in the future. And we're speaking to Seth Buechley. He's the president of Solid Technologies, and Ted Erb. He's a public safety consultant and former fire prevention chief of Bellevue, Washington. And gentlemen, you've both been at the forefront of making sure that public safety, from a wireless perspective, is forefront in people's minds, and certainly on the consumer side, so that people they don't have to they don't have to get exactly to the window of a building like, the World Trade Center to make a phone call, just due to the density of the building. And I think that's something worthwhile. Let me ask you this, Seth, if somebody was interested in Solid technology, and they're in building wireless systems, where would they go online to get information about it?
It's quite simple, Joe. It's solid.com. Solid.com, and there you can find a variety of case studies. We also have a blog that gives a lot of details about what the latest and greatest is in our industry with our partners and projects and trends. So it's a great resource.
Yeah. And what about you, Ted? Where could somebody go online, or what number could they call to contact you?
Well, they could certainly contact me at just tederbjr@gmail.com for consultant stuff on this issue. Also, I think a great source or resource would be both the ICC, the International Code Council, and or the City of Bellevue's fire prevention website has all sorts of information on in-building radio systems and this information.
Sure. And gentlemen, we've got about 5 minutes left in the show, but this really is starting to become a trend, not just in the United States, but in other places as well. I know that in Europe, they're also adopting similar technology, similar codes, and making sure that as new buildings go up or buildings that are refurbished, they make sure that they have that in-building system that's going to link everybody, whether it's the first responders or it's a consumer who's in the bottom of a building, maybe who's been mugged in the parking lot down below with all those concrete blocks around. In fact, I think insurance companies have even started to give some discounts for having this type of technology. Is that correct?
I've heard that rumor. This is Seth. I've not yet been able to verify it. I've heard it with one particular building owner, I believe, in the Philadelphia market. Yeah. But it's a recurring theme around somebody ought to, and so I think it represents an opportunity for the insurance community to come out with a clear message. But I'm actually not aware of it, although it sounds like a great idea to me.
Yeah, and probably.
Yeah, and instead, I would say the same thing. I've heard it from a number of sources, but have not been able to confirm whether or not they are or not.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if we could find out about that, if that actually is true. I'm trying to remember where I read it, but I did read it. It might have actually been in Europe. What, gentlemen, as we move forward, maybe we'll start with you, Seth, first. What's the biggest challenge right now in this industry and in the public safety industry from a wireless perspective?
I think the biggest challenge is whether or not FirstNet, the nationwide communication system for first responders, is going to have the funding and the business model to actually get implemented. And so the jury is still out. There's people on both sides. My view is that it's a fragmented market now, the public safety community, with some very, very large players that would probably like things to stay as they are. And so I think FirstNet, by definition, is disruptive. Our vision is that when FirstNet gets built, that it works indoors.
Yeah.
And stated simply, our vision for safer buildings is when there's an emergency, people can be notified in the building, that during the emergency they can talk to each other in the outside world, that when the first responders show up, that their radios perform in that building the way that they were designed. And I believe eventually, this is kind of vision casting, I believe eventually the first responders will be able to know where people are inside that building. And I think that's the future.
Yeah, no, that's really cool.
And this, Ted, I would certainly agree with Seth on that. I think it's very fragmented right now. I think from a public safety standpoint, I think getting everyone on the same page as far as code development and then implementation would be some of the first steps that we could take.
Yeah. Do you think it's in fact, we're down to the last couple minutes of the show, but Seth, you brought up a really cool idea, and people are talking about most people now, just about everybody has a smartphone, and I guess you're talking about let's say I'm a first responder, and both of you gentlemen could talk about this. I come up to a building, and one of my issues is, where are people? And you might be able to someday look into a building and see where every cell phone is, right, or every smartphone. Is that what we're talking about here?
That's correct. Through Bluetooth, through Wi-Fi, through cellular. The technologies are emerging, but nobody's been able to figure it out at this point. Now, the good news is they call this location-based services. Well, marketing is ultimately, I believe, what's going to drive the development of this technology. But once it is developed, I could see a future where location is a key part of what these in-building systems deliver to the first responders.
Yeah.
And from a first responder standpoint, the technology, even though a little different, is starting to emerge where, the fire chief at a scene can see where his people are already, or at least be able to evaluate their condition.
Yeah.
Do I have a firefighter in trouble, or are they getting overheated? So that technology is there. So I think it's time to bridge the gap.
Yeah, that'd be great. Gentlemen, that's the end of the show. It's been great. Seth Buechley, President of Solid Technologies, and Ted Erb. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Great show.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, take care.